to the Making Up the Numbers podcast. The Making Up the Numbers podcast is sponsored by Hope Technology, J-Tech Suspension, Revolution Bike Park, Ride Southern Spain, Schwal, and the world's finest independent mountain bike magazine, Singletrack.
Hello and welcome to Season 5, Episode 2 of the podcast. The Downhill World Cup season is just around the corner now, and we've got another packed show to get you in the mood. Kicking things off, ESO recently announced some amendments to the changes they previously issued to the World Cup format for 2023, and I'll be chatting through those with Jack and Emmy. Then we'll be joined by the Kiwi legend, Eddie Masters, before we chat with El Salvador's most famous mountain biker, Mariana Salazar, about her journey to World Cup racing and her current battle with cancer. Kicking things off, ESO recently announced some amendments to the changes they previously issued to the World Cup format for 2023, and I'll be chatting those through with Jack and Emmy. Then we'll be joined by the Kiwi legend Eddie Masters for a chat about his journey to World Cup racing and balancing racing downhill and enduro at the same time. So let's get going. Jack, another Portuguese national, but you couldn't quite take the win this time around.
No, not this time, mate. We nipped back over there. I needed to go and pick my truck up, and it aligned nicely with the fourth round of their series. So, yeah, it was good. It was nice. It's the first time I've just been away with the mechanic on my own. So it was just an opportunity to kind of run through my process as we're getting closer to the big races. The track was pretty simple, but like crazy fast, like insane in spots where certainly the lower section, you could really hurt yourself. So I kind of rode as I wanted to. I didn't take any huge risks. I kind of had to level up more for my race run than I wanted to, just because after qualifying, I kind of had a look at the times and I was like, shit, if I don't pull my finger out here, I'm going to get smoked by quite a lot of people. So, yeah, I kind of pushed harder than I kind of wanted to in my race run. I was happy with it for the day. But I mean, fair play to Gonzalo. Gonzalo has won 2 of them now, and he had a really good result in Tarouca. And I think he's consistently beat me at the 3 we've done together by the same amount of time. He's just won Portuguese national champs yesterday from Borges, who races enduro on a race that track last year, and it's so pedally. So it's going to be interesting to see how Gonzalo goes this year if he carries on the form he's got. Yeah, I think he's going to go well. So, yeah, I was happy and just ready to go now, really.
Cool. So that's it. That was round 4 of the Portuguese nationals. Is that it for the season? Are they done?
They have one more, which I think is the first weekend in June. I might be wrong, but it's before Lenside. I'm not doing that one. I've got no reason to travel back out there now. And to be honest, I've run out of days. We get our 90 days, don't we, out of 180, and I'm on 89 when I get back from the Mega Avalanche on the 10th of July. So I can't do another trip anyway over what's planned. So yeah, just we leave here on the 5th of June, which is 2 weeks today for the first World Cup. So yeah, just scheduled training now and just want to get at it like everybody else. It's been a long wait. Never thought about that, actually, Brexit being a right pain in the arse for you. Yeah, if you manage it all right, it's not too bad. Like from July, for the rest of the year, I'm fine because we've got a bit of a break and then stuff in North America. But I spend so much time in Portugal in those early months. It's just eaten into my days. So, yeah, quite what's the word? Inconsiderate of Sarah to arrange a holiday in January to Europe as well, so that took another 8 of my days. How dare she?
8 days.
Come on.
She doesn't listen to the pod, but she'll probably have heard that through that doorway, so I might have to put a helmet on. But yeah, so maxed out on days, so I couldn't go back if I wanted to. So
are you happy with where you're at for you in the team coming into the season?
Yeah, I mean, personally, very happy. First year going in well, if we exclude 2020, first year since 2019, going into a season feeling 100% fitness and happy with my riding. So, yeah, very, very excited and just keen to just enjoy it and let it happen. There's so many good riders now. Getting into that top 60 is going to be so tough. So, yeah, excited to go, do my best. And if I get into some semi-finals, then I'll be well happy. If I get into any finals, I'll be absolutely over the fucking moon. I think anyone getting in that top 30 now is is going to have ridden their legs off. So yeah, I'm real happy with myself and the bike, and everything's good, timing and testing. So just keen to get going. Dan's third year uni. He's wrapping up his dissertation. I think he actually handed it in on Friday, which is why he wasn't at Dovey with me training. So we've given him some time this year to just get that boxed off and sorted. Obviously, I went through uni myself, so I know how important that is. So we've not kind of put excess pressure on him. He's done a few preseason races, and he's in good shape. I know he's riding well, and he's fit and healthy and really good shape after obviously being injured last year. So yeah, he's going to be absolutely frothing to get out after being busy at uni. So he's going to be good. And I know in our junior is just one of them for the juniors. They have good weeks, they have bad weeks. And on his good weeks, he's pushing me and Dan on the splits, which we haven't had from a junior since Dan. So if he can turn it on and have a good week, he'll do well. It's how he deals with it when he's up against it that we'll have to see.
Excellent. Well, if you could choose anyone on the planet to talk to about the amendments to World Cup level racing, you'd probably ask the woman who was at the centre of the negotiating table with the ESO, Emily Siegenthaler. What a job you've done. Are the riders happy, Emmy?
Yeah, I mean, happy, I don't know. I don't know if they'll ever be happy, but no, I'm just kidding. For sure happier than before, when the announcements were done and then nobody knew about like the points, and it was a little bit of a disappointment that the riders weren't consulted. But I guess now that's all like behind us, because we could work with Rory Cunningham, which is like the technical delegate for ESO and USCI at the races now.
Yeah.
So I guess that was a good point. And the fact that I did some negotiation, but I think the fact that I tried to like really structure the association in a sense of having like a proper association that registered under law, and that we have now a president and all this type of structure that ESO demanded. And now Aaron Gwynn is our president, and he did most of the negotiation with Rorid. And I mean, I'm not sure exactly why, but the vibe just flow better between these two.
Yeah.
And that might have to be maybe my connection to my team, or I don't know, but like it was really good to see that Aaron could do really good communication with ESO, and that the structure of the association was taken seriously, and that we could work out something that worked for basically almost both parties.
Cool. So let's work through them. So there's three kind of major changes. The first one is that semi-finals are now worth fewer points than they were going to be. An elite men win was previously worth 200 points, just 50 less than finals. Now this win will be worth 100 points, and in elite women it's been reduced from 150 to 100. What that means is the emphasis is back on winning finals. Do you know if that one was a hard one to negotiate?
No, the points we discussed with Rory already, but it was more details than on protection that I would discuss with Aaron, because it's this it was way harder to negotiate protection.
Yeah.
Because there was the question of no protection as well.
Yeah.
Which was something the riders considered, but I don't think they're quite ready to go that road yet.
Yeah.
But the points, like we already knew there was a problem with the points, because then it could be like someone would just like win every semi-final, but then be like 10th every final and still win the overall. So that wouldn't be cool to see.
No.
So I know points were like quite easy thing to do.
You're representing the riders, but you're in the middle of it all, so you have to kind of respect ESO's position too. Are there any riders out there, I'm not expecting you to name them if there are, but who are still really strongly opposed to semi-finals?
Semi-final was hard. We tried to negotiate to do 1 year with the current schedule.
Yeah.
But I guess ESO is under certain pressure of putting some change out there, and it didn't seem like they wanted to wait a year and they wanted results straight away. And also for the length of the show, because they want to show like a longer run, they had to kind of like reduce the numbers. So the semi-final were kind of their solutions for not throwing like three-quarter of the riders out and just take a final with 30 and 10, which I respect.
Yeah.
Like, but schedule-wise, it's tricky. And the riders were first very against it, but then kind of like after many discussions and also maybe time, we're like, okay, we're going to try it.
Yeah.
And if it's like really, really like bad logistically, like we could have another discussion maybe after this year for pros and cons, but they're like, okay, if you guys say that solution, we're going to try it. So I found that very, very good from the riders that they kept an open mind, but for sure it's not making their life easier.
Yeah. It's quite weird because in the UK here, we've gone with the nationals. We've gone to doing seeding on Saturday and then racing on Sunday. And that suits me really well because I used to struggle doing 2 runs on a Sunday. And this weekend we've had the Pierce race at Bala, which was 2 runs on a Sunday. And I did find it hard getting up for that second run after you've done one already. So I can kind of understand, like having to do 2 major runs in a day is going to be.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy, but it's been done in the past. Like when I started my first year in 2008, there was that way already. Yeah. It's just that we were kind of like concerned about injury risk and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But ESO apparently worked with a lot of statistics and experts and said that it shouldn't increase like injury risk. But I guess we're gonna see. Like, the riders were like, okay, it doesn't look like we can go back to the old schedule. We better embrace it and try to work on fine tuning that new format. Yeah. So for sure, it wasn't easy, but I think everyone now is past that point and is really, really excited to start the season.
Yeah, there's another slight amendment too, in that the points for winning finals are back to being equal for men and women. Women had been reduced down to 200, I believe. Was that something you asked for?
So there was there's the Riders Association, which has a number of men and number of women, and obviously the number of women is smaller. But we also talk a lot within like the top 20 of the girls, and we are trying to push for maybe in the future more girls in quali and more girls in finals, because now that's something we couldn't quite get an answer on, or because there's a lot going on, but maybe that's something we're trying to like push for, because there's so many juniors coming up, and like I made a list of all the names and we're all like, wow, it's gonna be hard to even like make top 15,
Yeah.
So the points is just like someone like Miriam and Cam were like, okay, like why do the women have less points? Like, especially for them, the quali points were the same, men and women, and they're slightly different, I think 180, but then the ratio between the importance of qualifying, semi-final and final were not quite the same between men and women.
Yeah.
So for women, the qualifying will be a bit more important than semis in comparison to finals. And we just wanted to make it like equal, not a sense of equality, but just like fairness, that the semi-final is not a little bit more important statistically to the women, to the men. It was just a question of math, basically.
So the second thing is protected rider status. So initially, the top 5 men and top 3 women from 2022 were protected for every semi and final in 2023. There was talk of the top 5 men being reduced to 3, but either way, this gave those riders a pretty huge advantage. And if you listen to the last episode of the pod, Andreas Kolb, who would have been one of those 5, even said he didn't think it was fair. So it's been changed. Now the top 3 in each category are protected, and the best ranked riders in 2023 will be added until a total of 10 men and 5 women are reached. For round 1, that means the top 10, top 5 from last season. That's a lot fairer, I think. Obviously, a lot rests on the first 2 rounds, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that was tough. Like, I think the riders and everyone in the association wanted more protection, but for ESO, they were like kind of afraid that they're going to end up with like a show of 40 riders instead of 30 if something happens, weather-wise and stuff, and they couldn't risk that. to have like many more riders, and it adds like, I don't know, 20, 25, 30 minutes on the show.
Yeah.
And that's something they didn't want to risk, even though statistically it never really happens. I think it's like on the whole season, there may be like 2 riders, 2 men per race that are protected and don't make it, or maybe less than 1 for the women. So that's like a really low number, but I get their issues. And I think we try to push it to the maximum. Yeah. But obviously there was also like we voted in the association between having a protection highest possible or no protection, and it was really close.
Right.
So maybe in the future, maybe no protection. That's something that we need to see. But obviously for ESO, they kind of won the drama. They also won the superstars on the start line. So one on the start gate. So that's like, yeah, I think we came to a good compromise.
Yeah, and juniors will be top 3 protected for each category after the first round. The third thing was that time training is no longer a mandatory part of the event, so probably won't happen, which is a nightmare for everyone playing Fantasy League, if Fantasy League is allowed now. I saw that somewhere the other day. Somebody said they won't know if they'll be able to do Fantasy League, but that's a different matter. How big a miss would that be to the riders, Jack, not having any time training?
Yeah, I mean, obviously if you're in that top 60, or it might be different now when they do run it, but if you're in that group of riders and you get your time session, then, I mean, Lords was one of the places where those guys gained a huge advantage because there was such a long queue for the uplift because it didn't work.
Yeah.
And then you get to the time session and all of a sudden there's only however many riders waiting to get on the lift. I think some riders did like 3 or 4 runs in that time training session, whereas we only did 3 runs all day. So they got up to 6 runs, whereas everybody who wasn't in it didn't get any. So there's part of the time session is not just the timing, but they it's literally extra practice, which I've always seen as slightly unfair in that if you're running 61st in the overall men, you will get an hour and a half less practice than the rider ranked 60th in the overall. You might be on the same number of points, but because they're 60 and you're 61st, you're going to get less practice at an event by the time you get to your qualifying run, which to me seems a little strange. But yeah, I mean, it's always quite exciting for not just the riders, but the fans to see how fast everyone's going. I've personally always used it to gauge myself and see how I'm going towards the end of that first day of practice, whether I'm in the session or whether I'm not, because obviously you've done your GoPro runs and you can compare your GoPro time to their time practice times if you're not in the session. And if you're good, you're like, right, more of this in the morning. And if you're not good, you go, right, shit, back to the drawing board. I've got to find some time in the morning. So it is useful. Whereas now, if it's not there, there'll be more, people will time, but they'll time on their own GoPros and then keep their time secret. So I would imagine the main reason they've took the rule out is because for when they combine enduro into the schedule, when are they going to have time to run time practice? Like, it's going to be so busy at the event that they're probably thinking, well, hang on, if we need to sacrifice that session, we need to be actually allowed to sacrifice the session. So I think that's why they've potentially made it flexible so that if they can't fit it in, they can just go, right, that's not happening.
Let's come on to schedule, because that's what I wanted to talk about next. So am I right in thinking that, I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen a schedule for Lenzerheide yet. Day 1, and I'm not going to say whether it's Wednesday or Thursday or whatever, because it will change, but day 1's track walk. Day 2 is practice. Day 3 is qualifying for the top 60. Does that mean, it's qualifying, the top 60 go through. Is it 60 plus protected or 60 including?
Yes.
60 plus.
Plus protected.
Yeah, you don't get pushed out.
Right, okay.
That would be extremely unfair.
And then day 4 in the morning, semi-final, the top 30 go through. And is that plus 30 plus protected again?
Yeah.
Yes.
Plus.
Yeah, okay. So the top 30 plus protected qualify, and then day 4 in the afternoon is the final. And I was going to ask, how has this affected practice time? Have you seen a schedule, Emmy?
Yeah. So there's still, so it's fairly late, so put it that way. But the schedule is not definite because we've been trying to, especially race day, change a couple of stuff. Practice. There's not less practice than usual.
Right.
Let's put it that way. I would say there's enough practice.
Right.
But on the race day, there's a bit of difference between men and women. And it was never a difference of practice times between men and women. And because there's so less women on track, there was less practice and there was not enough practice for race day. So especially now with the rule book, we did some research, and usually there's mandatory 1 hour of practice on race day. So that wasn't the case. So that was like a little bit of a push. So we're trying to change that because you need the time to do at least 2 runs. But I'm fairly confident that is going to be the case. How it's going to be solved, I'm not sure if it's going to be separate, if it's going to be all together, because at the test event, they did the practice all together. And the guys were like, didn't really know this. So, like people are going to practice at different times depending on their race runs, So with that amount of people, mostly it won't be like a problem. So that's going to be still like probably defined in the next days, hopefully weeks. I'm not sure. But yeah.
Can't be weeks. We've got a World Cup in 2 weeks.
I know it's quite late, but let's put it that way. If it's good, it doesn't matter. So day one track walk, you're right, but I think the juniors are probably practicing that day too, because they have the race on Friday, so they need to practice the first day too. So that's tricky. Junior race, 3 race runs for elites, and then the enduro somewhere. Yeah. So. Well, it's not easy for them to fit everything.
That was what I was going to come on to. So Leogang will be the first of the multidiscipline festivals of cycling. At Ballarat at the weekend, someone who might know about these things suggested that the final stage of the Enduro World Cup was going to be on the downhill track, so it can be filmed, and that would run on kind of Friday afternoon. Do you know if that's the case? And if so, how will that affect the practice? Is that what Jack was talking about before? That's the time training session?
No, I've no details on that, and I wouldn't reveal them, but I've heard that as well.
Yeah.
And that will make sense in the sense that the only way they're gonna have to like have live coverage of the enduro.
Yeah.
But talking to enduro riders, I don't know if they're really keen on the idea. depending on the bottom section of Leogang after all our practice, the downhill practice,
and it will
on a smaller bike. So but I'm not sure we're gonna fit it in. It's completely unknown to me as well. I mean, I've nothing to do with enduro, but like I've heard as well that they're gonna run it and film it, but I have no idea when, because Friday afternoon you can't do it because it's like XCC.
Yeah, and here's a thought. Here's a thought. That's right. I was always under the impression that Enduro was advertised that you had the Enduro World Cup or whatever it used to be called, the EWS, and the magic of it was that these guys were riding this, and anyone could ride the same track as Richie and Jesse and Martin and those guys. Now, I've got every confidence in the top enduro riders riding that bottom section of Leogang, no problem. They'll boss it. However, as we move further down the pack, that ain't gonna work. Like, I've ridden that track in the wet, and it's fucking lethal on a downhill bike. So are they going to only use that stage for top 30 men and top, I don't know how many Enduro World Cup women are in that live feed, but are they going to split it off and have like an elite stage and only have certain riders doing it? Because they can't open that stage up to the whole of the enduro circuit because it wouldn't work.
How many people are at an an Enduro World Cup.
Unless it's changed since I used to do EWSs, it's a lot of riders.
And will they?
I don't know if it's changed now. I'm speculating there. It's all hypothetical. That.
Is that enough to trash the downhill track, do you reckon?
Nah.
No,
because it wouldn't be on our lines probably anyway. But
I think they'll probably go around the big gaps as well, because usually they don't have big gaps in it.
That big one.
And they have also, I think, smaller time gaps between each other, if I remember correctly. Maybe not the top riders, but sometimes they have 30 seconds on a track like that, on an enduro bike.
Whenever I've done
yeah, but I think maybe for the
it could be more
top, it might be more if they want to show more as well.
It worked really well if they were just showing the top riders through there. But if they opened it
that's
up,
maybe because I don't even know when they're going to do practice on it. They probably won't practice it.
Maybe they'll chuck them in with us.
Yeah. I mean, it's fair. It's like an insane challenge for them to put everything in there. Like,
fair fox to them.
It's crazy.
Can you send riders down that track without any practice?
Yeah, blind racing. That's the principle of enduro. No?
I understand that, but if you
Headmaster
will love it. Ask him.
But if you race
Eddie will be all over it.
We just
he'll have ridden it all week on the downhill bike.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd love it. Is Eddie going to do both events? We'll ask him that.
Probably.
He might. He might.
But yeah,
he's crazy. He might.
You've got to have done 2 runs, like you said. You've got to have done so many runs to be able to race in a downhill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is it not, if you're sending people down that course to race, is it all right to send them down blind?
It's almost like a direct contradiction, isn't it?
Yeah.
Only you race from the World Cup because you've only done 1 run, but here's your enduro bike. Go and have a go.
I mean, it's literally like
quite light. Yeah, your helmet's quite light. Yeah, you get in those woods. Yeah. Any body armor, just some small knee pads. Brilliant. Short sleeve t-shirt. Yeah, get in there. Go on.
Backpack.
It could be absolute carnage. It could be. It could be riders. 3 or 4 riders all in one section.
Oh yeah.
Keystone Cops.
It'll be great viewing.
Yeah.
And that's what they're going for. So.
I think we should probably give a big shout out to Rory and the team at ESO, though, for being so open to negotiating on those points, because they could have dug the heels in, couldn't they? And they could have just made it really awkward. But from what you're saying, Emmy, they've been pretty flexible.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, it was hard at first. Being honest, it was hard to establish a connection, because I think maybe also on us, we're kind of also vindictive a little bit, and a bit a too negative position on semis, and not being open-minded enough. And then after Christmas, it kind of opened up, everybody relaxed, and we could obviously I think Rory knew that the points at the protection and thing needed work, so maybe also that's why. Yeah. And we kind of continue to do a bit of the same that we did last year with a chat about the track feedback and stuff. I think Jackie will be on it as well as a team manager. Try to put almost one representative of almost every team in there.
Yeah.
It will be quite a lot of people, but I think it will be very valuable for Rory as well to have feedback, live feedback on how the track is evolving and how the safety issues we could have. So no, it's looking good. I mean, everybody's very excited to start and see what's working, what's not, and just try it out.
We've had the Nova Mesto XC World Cup with ESO already. I've only had a brief glimpse of the highlights, but the course markings seemed to work well. The camera work looked great. The commentary was okay. It's all starting to come together, isn't it? Just a few weeks now.
Yeah, I mean, I watched Nova Mesto, and of course, they have their expert. Bart Prentice is the same expert as before, so it is not a big change.
Yeah.
And Rick is from ESO, so the voice is also familiar. And Cedric had a little bit of he came over, I think, to commentate as well, a little bit of the cross country. So yeah, it wasn't bad. It wasn't Warner, but it wasn't bad. So yeah, we'll see. I think it's gonna be cool.
So looking back at the races we've had already, Fort William National, it was a Brit 1-2-3 in the men's with Laurie Greenland taking the win with a new course record of 4:25.6. Matt Walker came in second, 4 seconds back, with Charlie Hatton 0.5 behind him. That's a big margin for Laurie there, isn't it, Jack?
Yeah, it certainly is, mate. He's on a mission this year. You can see that. I mean, you know, it was clear that Laurie was wanting to put down a heater there and be rolling on some confidence into the World Cups and into World Champs later in the year. And, you know, some of the other big riders, you know, maybe were holding their cards a bit closer to their chest. Obviously, Jordan, who won qualifying, had a puncture, and Loic had a puncture, so we didn't get to see what they were wanting to put down. But yeah, it certainly looks like Laurie is not to be messed with this year, and it would be really exciting to see him put a big season together. So yeah.
So as you say, behind the Brits, it was Piron, Brosnan, Vergier, Shaw, Coulange, Kolb, and Deprella. Fastest qualifier, Jordan Williams. You just mentioned him then. I was chatting to him at Bala. He flatted on the boardwalk. You know, the bit between the two boardwalks where there's that little banking that you guys put your front wheel on, like a little mini wall ride. Yeah, right at the wall ride there.
Before we even got to the rock garden.
Yeah, he smashed his front wheel. I think it was his front into that ledge of the wall, little mini wall ride, and I think he said he did the rim.
Jesus,
he hit it that hard. So yeah, we didn't get to see his first split even. But yeah, not a good weekend for him, and okay weekend for him because he did well in seeded, but not a good race for him and Loic, who also flattered. But no massive surprises really. Good result for Henry Kerr in 11th. He was pretty buzzing, I think, when I saw him beforehand.
Yeah, Henry's a really good rider and finished the season strong last year with that Valdesol performance. So it's going to be interesting to see what he can do on that new team, on that new bike. It's one of them. These juniors, they start riding so young now that in my head, Henry's older than he actually is. Does any of you know how old Henry is?
He's done
21, 22.
No, he's got to be older than that because he said he'd just done a 5-year master's degree, I think. So he's got to be 23.
He's similar age to Matt Walker.
Wasn't he on the podium the year after at Worlds? The year after Matt Walker. Because he got bronze, didn't he?
He was a junior in 2017 for sure because he was at that World Champs, and he may have been a first year that year.
Yeah, and then I think the year after he got a podium
in 2018. Then he's a year younger than Matt. So my point is he's got a long time left. When we think that Piron only really started to flourish in his is he around 24? I think that might be wrong there, but yeah, he could certainly be going places.
Yeah. Barring injury, the British team for Worlds looks very strong. If you add Bernard Kerr, Danny Hart and Jordan Williams to that top 3, that only leaves one spot remaining.
Yeah, it's frightening this year, and it's. I was talking to somebody about it earlier today. Actually, I would not want to be picking that team this year.
Those top 6 kind of you pick themselves. It's just that last spot.
Vickers always says that. He always says it's pretty much picks itself, and then sometimes there's a bit of ambiguity over who you take and then who your reserves are. But I think it largely sorts itself out, especially for a track like Fort William. It's you're going to, if there is any kind of indecision between two riders, it's such a specialist track. One rider might have a better record there than another, or so.
Yeah. So in the women's, it was Nina Hoffman, who we heard from at the back end of the last show after taking the win from Cami in second and Monica Rasnik in third. How was Cami feeling about it all afterwards?
I think she had a pretty decent seeding. She was also point something off Nina. She felt good in seeding. And then she said, she's trying to open it up a little bit more. But then in final, she just tried too hard, maybe I think within the first split, and Nina crashed in the first split, and Cami kind of I think won the first split, or was real close to winning the first split, which she wanted to do, but then she exploded midway. Right. She was she's I was pushing too hard and I was braking everywhere because I was going too fast into corners, so she didn't really find the flow in finals. So she said it felt horrible. So that happened to me as well. Like sometimes you kind of have to find the rhythm, especially, I don't know how you feel, Jack, about it, but as a woman, especially for me, like a small woman on this track, I had to like kind of like reserve my strengths a little bit until the woods, and then to do a really good wood, and then the wood was gone and I could give everything to the end. But if I tried to like 200 till the deer gate, I was just like crashing the woods for sure. So yeah, it's a hard track. It's a long track. So she learned, and they stayed the whole way after to do testing and try some stuff out on the bike, and she felt way better when she left. So Nina is strong on this track, and we know it. So I think she was not far off, way closer than last year for sure. So
yeah,
that's good.
Going to be my next thing. We're coming into World Champs, or we will be, with Amory winning the last 3 World Cups at Fort William, and Nina winning the last 3 races there. It's unusual for streaks like that to go much further, isn't it? If you had to put your money on one of them winning Worlds, who would you go for?
Nina.
Nah. Nah. None of them, I'd say.
None of them. Yeah, but you should pick one. Come on, play the game.
Well, then Amory.
It's Cammy hiding behind the cupboard there.
She might. No, she's not here, but I mean, I don't know. I think this is like a track that she hasn't been riding for very long, and she's been doing so good on it already.
In my defense, I didn't think Nina was going to win. I just answered George's question and picked one of the 2.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, there's a fair chance.
You shoot me through the laptop.
There's a fair chance, but I just want Cam to have the jerseys. Yeah, that would be cool.
So Danny Hart has won that national how many times, and never won the World Cup there? And
it's funny. I was looking back at Fort William. I think I was chatting with my mechanic about it, and we ended up on Roots and Rain doing a bit of looking at some of the races in the past. And I can't remember what year it was now. Maybe it was 2015. And Danny got beat by, I think it was Gwyn, by like 0 point something. And he then was close again another time. And they've even been the year after. And as you say, he's won the national there so many times. It would be so nice just to see him come back these years later and just go bang.
Well, he had that he's had like a nasty like skinny eating bug or something like that, so he couldn't race the national. So he does the national every year, does really well, and then can't quite follow it through for the World Cup. I just wonder if this year
doing some good there.
Yeah, not going to the national, just turning up for World Champs. Maybe that's the first race there, and he might just be able to do what he's done at the national. You know,
maybe. One thing, I think I've said this before on the pod, but one thing I do feel about Fort William is it is a track for an absolute unit to win it. And no disrespect to Danny at all, but I think to compete with the strength and power of someone like Piron, and then if he has an issue, someone like Bruni, I don't know. But then again, I'm contradicting myself because we've just seen what Laurie. So I'm contradicting myself. So yeah, who knows? I take it back. Sorry, Danny.
Crankworks Cairns, Emmy, and your girl Jenna Hastings took the win in the downhill with Louise Ferguson in second and Ellie Smith in third. She looked good doing it too. I think I just looked quickly, and the time I think was within 15% of Mick Hanna, who won the men's, which is a good guide.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really stoked that she got second and third a couple of times, and she couldn't quite back her first elite win, which was when she was still a junior, in Rotorua, but that was a home track. So I think she really wanted it. And yeah, she has a big job this season. like I said to you before the podcast, like we put a list of all the women that are like competing for even qualifying spots. Like it's insane. Like for Jenna to even go through qualifying will be a challenge, but going to a final this year will be a victory. So for every, we see with Phoebe, Phoebe was quite dominating Fort William usually, and she got fifth at the BDS, but it's 9 seconds, so you're not sure, she probably will go to finals if she does a good run. But then I don't know, like some of the tracks might suit Jenna best. But yeah, it will be hard for every upcoming junior this year. So hopefully, yeah, we could get one or two very, very good rounds to keep a motivation going.
Excellent. And in the men's, it was the aforementioned Sick Mick taking the win from Jackson Frew with Tohoto Ariki Penn in third and Blenky in fourth. Bloody amazing that Sick Mick's still winning downhill races at 39 years of age, isn't it, Jack? That must give you some inspiration.
Especially when he said he was retiring.
I know. I think he was on an enduro bike as well.
Yeah, he was. He'll
have had the downhill forks on it though, did he? He loves putting on that bike.
No, I don't think he did. Because, Cairns is the sprint at the end, is the...
There's a lot above it, though. That rock garden's filthy and it's still a tough track. But yeah, the thing is with Mick is he absolutely loves it. And I think when he retired, I remember chatting with him and he said he didn't really know what he was going to be doing when he retired from the World Cups. And next minute, he's grabbed this thing that he's doing with Yeti and Shimano and he's riding those bikes with the Fox suspension and with that team, and I think he's just really enjoying it. I think so. Yeah,
cool.
He's not going anywhere in a hurry, is he? Well, he is. Yeah, it's good to see him on form.
Right, that's all we've got time for in part one. We'll be back with Eddie Masters after these messages. Making his Making Up the Numbers debut, I'm delighted to welcome the one and only Eddie Masters to the podcast. How are we doing, Eddie?
I'm good, mate. George and the rest of the team, thank you for having me. It's an honour. I've tuned into a few of your episodes and got to say it's great content. And so stoked to be here.
Excellent. Well, we're stoked to have you. You just landed in Salzburg, I believe. Have you met little Vincent yet?
Yep, I doubt he'll remember me, but yeah. I'm here on Uncle Judy's, just catching up with my 4-month-old nephew, and staying with my big brother Win, and planning to ride a bit of downhill for a few days to shake the cobwebs out, because I haven't actually been on the downhill bike very much, and as you well know, we've got a World Cup coming up, so trying to get back into the swing of things. And today we rode Leo Gang, but it rained all day, and it was fun, but it should be hopefully it'll get better.
How was that bottom section?
To be honest, it was the best I've ever ridden it, because I've only really ever ridden it in diabolical conditions.
Yeah.
And completely manageable. But even with only 3 of us riding it in the rain, it started to show its true colours. Yeah, Jack laughs. He knows what I mean. Yeah.
So, with Win as a dad, how are you going to make sure that you're cool Uncle Eddie?
Funkle Eddie. I'll be the Funkle.
Funkle Eddie. Yeah, I like that. That's cool.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll probably let him do things that his mum and dad don't let him do.
That I can believe.
Yeah, I think that's the key to being a funkle. Yeah.
So before we get into it, there was something I discovered when I was researching the episode with Win, and that was your listing on exploreceleb.com. Are you aware of this? Did you hear that?
Yeah, I actually I listened to the episode. I was cracking up. I was actually working under a house.
Right.
And I was just lying in the dust, just pissing myself.
So I'll read it again for anyone who missed that episode. It is available online for anyone to go and have a look at on exploreceleb.com. Eddie Masters is a well-regarded name in the world of racing. Eddie is a licensed enduro and downhill racer from the beautiful country of New Zealand. You might also recognise him as the brother of Win Masters. Mostly the young man is admired for doing stunts and tricks wearing flip-flops, which he mainly performs on his bike, Pivot Firebird. Did you write that, Eddie? Where have you got that from?
It's with the invention of AI and stuff. That's got to be Chat GPT, or
Do you think they tested Chat GPT by writing stuff like that?
Yeah, it's got to be. That's the stuff that it would only a robot would be able to spell that kind of If it was me, I would have mentioned like strapping good looks and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. So I
Yeah.
think we all know the backstory of how you, Win, and Blanky got into bikes. And so I wanted to start with 2012. Your first year racing World Cups, 4 races, and your results were DNF, DNQ, DNQ, DNF. Do you ever think about how life might be different if it had gone badly?
Well, it can't get much worse than that, can it?
That was what I was meaning.
Yeah. Oh man, it was.
Where did it all go right?
It didn't really go right.
Tell us about it.
To be honest, like to flip that your initial question, I think it would have changed if it had gone right
Yeah.
that first year. But yeah, I think first of all, I wasn't very good at racing mountain bikes, obviously. Yeah, and I was far too fixated with the more materialistic type things that came along with riding, like having. I remember I built up my bike, and I was actually riding a Pivot that year, and I built it up with the flashiest stuff, the lightest wheels, like basically everything you shouldn't do when you're a privateer.
Yeah.
And completely disregarded things like having good tires, like knowing your setup. Like I wouldn't have even known my tire pressures or what a pressure gauge was.
Yeah.
Didn't know suspension settings or anything. I was actually on flat pedals, and yeah, I had my name on the back of my jersey, and I thought I looked like a World Cup racer, but I couldn't have been further from it. And
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
I'm just like as the results showed, it didn't really pan out the way I had been visualizing my first season on the World Cups to go.
So
You're one of the few people who I can remember my first meeting with on the circuit. You probably won't remember this, but you were in Montserrat car park with Jesse Bear and whoever else you were traveling with.
Yeah.
And I got introduced to you because I know Jesse through my mate Baron, and you guys were just living like fucking animals and just having the best time. And yeah, you always had flip-flops on. And you, as I said, you're one of the few people I can remember meeting for the first time because it was just such a Kiwi Aussie like set up.
So when what did you? Was it all another level to you? The racing, what was your speed like when you were riding, or was it just that the bike didn't last very long?
Put it this way, I reckon I probably would have still been DNFing if the track was in splits. Yeah, like there was flashes of brilliance amongst the mud. And like having speed is one thing, but being able to control it is actually the skill.
Yeah.
So
I should write that down. That's a good one.
Yeah. And so like you don't get to go and race World Cups by being a slow rider, but like you've got to make it to the bottom, and you've got to have all the equipment and stuff and all your ducks in a line, with equipment, physical and mental. And I didn't really have any of those, but like but it showed me, at least I was like aware enough. And I was also coming in where I knew a lot of the riders, because a lot of them would come to New Zealand. So I was friends with like Rat Boy and Sambo, and then all the Kiwis were like kind of on a bit of a rise then. Brooke was killing it. Had a lot of friends that were kind of on the up in the downhill world, and I was quite embarrassed because I thought I had kind of big shoes to fill. So it kind of like fired me up to go and figure it out, which that's why I said I think if it had gone well, then it might have turned out completely different.
Yeah.
So the best thing was to like make a shitload of fundamental errors and then go and rebuild from the ground up, rather than like trying to, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think it's gone now, that ability for someone to come over, try and race World Cups, fail, but then still give it another go?
Yes and no. I think, like if you're a young rider now, it's pretty hard not to be disillusioned when you don't have the speed that like Jackson Goldstone and Jordan do at the same age. But like, I try and like tell people like, like if they've got speed that's well beyond their years.
Yeah.
But there's nothing to say that like in 4 years' time, if you keep plugging away at it, you can't get to that level. It's just like right now you're at a different level. But I think to get someone to keep coming back and plugging away for those 4 years is a bit harder, because it like seems like it's a bit further out of reach without having like team support and stuff. But then on the other side, you've got, like you can have a world class race bike that has completely stock products. So there's no equipment and stuff that is holding you back. It's all like very within reach. Even on like a shop deal, you could get, you could go buy a V10 and it's going to be a great bike, or a Pivot Phoenix.
Always working.
Yeah, mate. You know. Yeah. But like you can go and buy a bike off the shop floor or through your local dealer or something, and if you have, like I said, all those fundamental aspects, then there's nothing to say that you can't just like roll straight in and turn it up.
Cool.
Yeah, but it's like it is tough. I think the hardest thing for young guys coming in now would be like seeing the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like you come in, and this kind of like leads into like the next year of my racing in 2013, where I had one goal, which was like, and because I was like, I'd finished uni and I was like I'd never really planned on being a pro racer. So I was like looking to kind of start the next chapter in my life, but I wanted to tick one goal, and that was to qualify to World Cup. It was like a bucket list thing I wanted to do. But then when I put in all the work and stuff, I qualified at the first World Cup that year. And then I'd planned on only racing like 5, and I qualified at all of them. So I just kept going, and it kind of just snowballed the rest of the season. But yeah, so like I ticked off that year, my sole goal was to qualify. And then, so like your goals were going in like incremental increases. So the next year you were like, okay, like I think I could be like maybe a top 40 guy. And you're just getting closer and closer to the goalpost, but the goalpost like moves as well.
Sure. So, touching on that, what you just started talking about there, in 2013 you came out firing, 41st at round 1 in Fort William, 26th round 2 Val d'Isole. You mentioned that obviously things didn't go well in 2012, and the fact they didn't fired you up to get ready for 2013. What did you do in the off season to kind of, what were the training things you did, and how did you approach it? What's your 10-year memory?
Pretty good. First of all, I went and got a bike that I like knew wasn't going to break, and I actually rode a Kiwi bike, a Zeroed, which was like gearbox, rearward axle path. I built it up on like some really heavy wheels. It was a tank. I think it weighed like 45 pounds. But I did the whole season on one set of wheels with absolutely no dents, because I kept blowing up wheels on the year before. So I was just like, actually, I'm just going to try this rearward axle path, because like in theory it makes sense that it's just going to like it's going to take all that impact as the rear wheel moves away from like whatever it's hitting, and it did. It was mint. So I built it up with some like solid wheels, and then I was trail building for the whole summer, which was like a pretty physical job, but like I was doing that and then actually had a proper crack at training. So I think I just came in, and I was just like, actually, I'm just going to cruise around in a van with the boys. I'm not even going to get a race kit. I'm just going to like have a laugh. We were like, our whole thing is we were on holiday. So that's where we were like, that's where I had the leather jacket, the holiday shirts, like, yeah, we were just, yeah. So we were just like being ourselves, not trying to be, you know, this idea of what you thought you needed to be like a true professional. Because, I remember the UCI commissaire came up to me in Fort William and told me I couldn't wear a holiday shirt, like a party shirt. And he said, look, mate, it's just not professional. And I was just like, well, I'm not a professional. Which is like which was so true at the time. And he could, like, what do you say back to that? Yeah. But I think, so like everyone seems to, it's all about figuring out what like works for you. And I think in a sport that's like a pressure cooker, it's just about being able to find like whatever you can make you like comfortable. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like having a team truck. It's like, you look at like Brayton when he was running the Hope setup, and they like had a mechanic, a crafter, and a tent, and it's like 3 people, and you're running like a slick setup. It's small, but it's like that's all you need, and that can like bring out the best in people. And for us, it was like just doing it how we did it at home, which was like just dirtbagging and having fun, because like when you're spending all this money and you're spending 6 months on the road away from home, if the race doesn't go well, at least like you might have had fun for the other, 23 hours, 56 minutes of that day, because like you've worked so long, and like, you worked hard to get there, and you're paying for it yourself. So you may as well like get some return with some good times on like your own dollar.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Hovering around the clothing topic, that year you famously wore the T-shirt with "Looking for a Team" written on with a marker pen. I don't think anyone picked you up that year, but in 2014 you then went on to become the Bergamont Hayes. Were you team owner as well as team manager, or just team manager?
Yeah, it's like it was kind of different because I came in. It was like a factory team, so I was like, I would have been like team owner, but like team manager, kind of like how Bernie runs Pivot. Like we have a contract to provide a team to the company. I had those T-shirts. I had one for practice that said "Sponsor this 2014." And and then the other one for the next day was "Looking for a Team." And it actually worked. It was like, funnily, so like I thought on the back of that season that people would like kind of hit me up, and you're kind of like, this should be easy, and then just like crickets. no. You're like, it's like a meme of someone like
phone.
just sitting by the phone, and you're
just
like
waiting.
The neighbor's phone rings and you pick up yours, like, so it wasn't all rainbows and butterflies like I thought it was going to be. So then I was just like, I was pretty fired up because I'd kind of like had a year that had exceeded my expectations. So I wasn't keen to like throw in the towel just yet. So then I was just like, well, if I can't get a team, I'll just start my own one. Like, this is like doable. Because even if I can just get enough like bikes and stuff, you can sell them and like at least kind of break even.
Yeah.
So I just went through a pink bike or maybe I think it was pink bike article, and it had all the downhill bikes from Eurobike that year, and I just like cold emailed every single company that didn't have a World Cup team.
Yeah.
And heard back and started having some comms with a few people, but I had a message that had gone into like my, you know how like Facebook Messenger has like message requests.
Yeah.
So the guy from Bergamot actually hit me up and asked if I was still looking for a team after the Leo Gang thing. And then I'd already put together this proposal because they said they were looking to start or get some kind of foot in the door with World Cup racing. And I was like, oh, well, I'm actually starting a team. Rather than signing me, I'll sign myself and I'll give you the team as well. And so we like went back and forth. We were in a little bit of a battle with Ben Reid because he was in the running for the deal as well. But in true Kiwi classic, you just keep dropping it.
The fuck out of him, yeah. I know what you're gonna say.
Yeah, you just keep dropping that price.
Oh, and he's Irish, so you're gonna win that battle.
Yeah.
So that year in 2014, we had a whopping big budget of 30,000 euros, and we raced the whole World Cup season with 3 riders and a mechanic, which was pretty good going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, not bad at all.
Yeah.
So 2014, you had another solid season, a step forwards, establishing yourself really in the pack, 3 top 30 World Cup finishes. Did you enjoy like the dual mode of rider and manager?
Yeah, I was loving it then because like I just kept saying like I had Jack and Casey Brown.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so like we were getting some good results. I think that year in Cairns, I qualified 4th, Jack qualified 11th. He finished like 11th. Casey finished 6th. Like we were having some real good, and just felt like that. You're like on that, riding that wave. We're still going around. Like had this shitty bus thing called the Black Pearl that was like.
That was my next question. Just keep talking. You got it.
Yeah, so we're having a bit of a hard time in this bus because it was like. It was so slow that like you're worried about actually getting to the races, not from breaking down, but like just it topped out like on the flat. It barely went 50 miles an hour. But yeah, it was pretty funny. That was our team bus. I had this like I bought it off eBay, went and picked it up as £1,000. And then we bought all this like vinyl wrap, and we wrapped it matte black, and I was like, yeah, this is looking sick. We're just gonna plaster a big Bergamot logo over it. And we drove it to Hamburg to pick up all the team parts and stuff, and the Germans are just like,
no,
they're they're like mouths are just on the floor like, you want to brand this? We're like, yeah, this is sick.
You should have paid us more fucking money.
Yeah. And they were like shocked that like they were calling it the Krusty the Clown bus. So they decided that they would prefer if we didn't put a big Bergamot logo on it. So then it just stayed black, and it was like full. Yeah, it's like it was a welfare bus. And yeah, it's pretty crack up.
What is, I think I know the answer to this question, but what is the best Black Pearl story you have for us?
Oh yeah.
Oh God, I'm crying.
So it was at Maribel, and which was the World Cup finals that year.
Yeah.
And then we had one more race to go to. in half year, but we were going to drive the Black Pearl back to Morzine, fly to Norway, and then we were all just going to boost, and someone was going to take the Black Pearl, and we never saw it again, which was mint. That was the plan all along. One of the boys snapped what did they do? They snapped the key in the ignition while the steering lock was on. So we couldn't get the key out. We could hotwire to start it. Like, we took all the barrel out and we turned it into just a screwdriver start. But we couldn't get the steering lock undone to like drive. And our mechanic was an actual car mechanic. And he's like, oh, you can just break the steering lock. You just swing, get a few of us and we'll just break through the steering lock, which supposedly you can do on heaps of cars. As it turned out, you couldn't do it on that car. And it's one of the only models of Ford or whatever that have like a deadbolt steering lock. And so we all started wrenching on the steering wheel and just snapped the steering wheel off. And we're like, fuck, we're like way up in the mountains. We've got about a 4-hour, probably 7-hour drive in the Black Pearl back to Morzine. And then so Rupert was like, oh, I've seen people on the internet. You just get some vice grips, or like you guys call them mole grips. So we went around the pits and got two sets of mole grips and put them in opposite directions and just made a steering wheel out of the mole grips.
Fucking plane.
And drove it all the way back to Morzine. And it was real funny. No one wanted to go in the bus because they were like, this is so dodgy. So me, Rupert, and Maylink went in the bus, and we wore full faces. And it was, man, we were cruising. Once we were down on the flat, we were just like, that was so good, and a good story.
Oh, that's incredible.
Wasn't there a story where with Casey at some point the vehicle was on fire or something, or she had to jump out at some point? Was it the same story, or was it a different one? I can't remember.
Oh, there was.
She used to tell me something about her jumping out of the van, but I don't know.
There was one.
Yeah,
there was one when it was like heating up and it was going. I'm pretty sure she jumped out because it was.
I think she was just scared it was gonna catch on fire because it was like boiling in there.
Yeah, it was.
I think wasn't it like going to the desert up or somewhere?
Yeah, it was like so, and because it was so slow and it had the folding doors, you could literally jump out and like run.
I think it's just running next to the van and be the same speed, basically.
Yeah.
Cool.
She did well to put up with all the shenanigans that went on.
Yeah, for sure. Her and Morgan were like probably the best female riders you could choose to be around you guys, for sure. Right. So let's move on to 2015. You jumped onto the Enduro World Series. So whose idea was it to like give AWS a go?
I liked the idea of it. So I'd always just try and do like, I think would always do like 1 or 2 a year where they fitted in, because I never had a trail bike until I signed with Bergamot. So like, I just always had a dirt jump bike and a downhill bike. So once I got a trail bike, I kind of got into like pedaling and riding them a bit more. So because I had one, I was like, oh, sick, we'll go do this new form of racing. And they always went to like some pretty cool like venues. So just where like, we never really went out of our way to race enduro. It was just like, if it was nearby to where we were, we would jump on board. Like I think that year, 2015, Waxer raced Sam Ones on his downhill bike.
How do you do?
He had two top 10 stages on his downhill bike.
Crazy, eh?
Yeah. And
You would probably do well if you get to the start in time. But
yeah. And that one was all good because it was a lot of lifts. But yeah, we just put a big cassette on it. He raced on his downhill bike.
Sick. Well, it looks like racing both series did really help you improve your result, because your World Cup result in downhill jumped from to another level. Really, it was 17th to Leogang, 11th in Lenze High, 16 Montanan, 15 Val di Sol. So, what do you think? Was it also because of your enduro training, or diversify your riding that and maybe the increased bike time that helped you?
Yeah, and I was just I was riding a lot of downhill by then, because I'd moved to Queenstown at the end of for that summer 2014 2015, and yeah, so I was doing a lot of laps, and I think that does pay off, especially we were dialing in our bikes. We're getting a second year on the bikes. We had a guy who was helping us with our suspension, and we had a bit more support. By that point, we had our bikes running for what were pretty kind of off the shelf bikes. We had them running pretty good. We had a dude who was doing kind of custom suspension for us, which now when I look back on it was actually real dialed. We could pick and choose between rear shocks. We're running Maxxis. We had SRAM support. Everything was pretty good. And yeah, Kurt had come on board that year to mechanic.
Yeah.
And we had another guy. So it was just things were just kind of growing a bit, and I think it just made the racing stuff easier. And you're just figuring it out. You're by that point, you're third year into your apprenticeship on World Cups. So starting to make some sense of it all. Yeah.
Where did you end up in the overall in that year with all these good results? Do you remember?
I still think I wasn't top 20.
Top 30 guy then?
Yeah, maybe 28.
But I mean, that was kind of in 2 years, there's a big improvement. It was also kind of you said, seeing the light in a tunnel, maybe to become what you want to be, But
then the thing is when I look back on it, going into the next year, I wanted to step it up to a whole nother level, and then it kind of went backwards a little bit.
So, 2016 Fort William World Cup. It's one of those weekends that as a fan you never forget. Eddie Masters, the Joker, seeded second behind G. The journey was nearly complete. Tell us a bit about that weekend, because it ended in one. It was either going to go one of two ways. You're either going to win it, or it was going to be,
Yeah, and that's, I was just, I guess, having a good weekend, because I seeded second and felt like I hadn't pushed. I just had a smooth run down the track, so I was looking back, the novelty of hindsight, you're you should have just done that again, and probably walked away with could have been an easy podium. But the voice in the back of your head goes, you could probably win this. And yeah, I just went out all guns blazing with one thing on my mind, and famously didn't make it very far.
Was it the first corner?
It's the second corner.
Tell us a bit about that sitting at the top then, how it must have felt to you, with all those guys.
Yeah, that's the thing, and people don't really understand the I guess the first time that you qualify let's say, single digits, because if you're used to qualifying like mid-pack, you get up there and there's a good 60 people there with 30 riders and their mechanics, plus like people leaving, coming and going. But when you get down to like the pointy end of things, there's no one up there and no one's chatting, and everyone's kind of, most people who are up there have been doing it for they're used to it, and they've got their systems in place, and they're not interested in chatting to Eddie Masters. So things kind of, it is a bit of a like stark realization, and you do feel like the weight of the occasion kind of weighing on your shoulders. And I guess that's exactly like where I guess they call it like overstimulation. And like, yeah, looking like if I was like, like if I was someone like Emmy who's in the position with Jenna or something, like having that experience and being able to like have someone who could like notice that would be super beneficial. Like or even like, just in a team environment, but like we'd never really had that. So, and then the next, and you learn from that massively, but
because that was going to be my next question, because you didn't just crash in the second corner, then you rode the top tube off. So you come into a drop sitting down and kind of ride the top tube for a bit.
There's a real famous crash on YouTube called Long Gully DH, and so if anyone hasn't seen that, go and look it up, and that's essentially what I did in Fort William. Yeah. So make sure, if you haven't seen Long Gully DH, go on YouTube it now.
So how did that kind of weekend affect you? Was it like a realization that you could actually, when you got away from it afterwards, was it like a realization that you could actually mix it with the big boys, or were you gutted that you didn't pull it off?
No, I wasn't gutted, because obviously I was slightly embarrassed because everyone had such a good time laughing at my expense. But no, I was just stoked to be in that position, and like if my career had ended then, it would have been like a cool thing to be a part of and say that you did, because like I'd grown up like idolizing all those guys that and never in my wildest dreams thought that I would be like dropping in around there, or even racing up until that point. So I definitely wasn't like dejected at all. A little bit gutted, like I think anyone would be, but also like soaking up the moment.
You probably agree with me, but whenever I had a good quali in my early years, because I only started racing downhill when I was in my 20s, like I'd never feel like my best was enough on race day.
Yeah.
Whenever I'd qualify anywhere near top 10, top 15, I'd drop into that race run and I'd just feel like I need to do something way above what I should do. And like you said before, if I'd just done what I'd done in quali, it would have been around about the same. And I didn't have anybody there to guide me through that. And then later on in my career, when I've had a few good qualies, I've been like, well, it is what it is. Like, I can't click my fingers and be Gwynny. Like, I've just got to ride down the fucking hill. And surprise, surprise, it usually then is quite similar to. But as you said, it's so hard to stand there with those guys you've idolized for 10, 15 years and be like, fuck, he's dropping in. He's gone and I'm still fucking here. Like,
yeah.
So 20th the following weekend in Leogang, 13th in Mont Saint Anne later in the season. How were Bergamont feeling at this point with you getting all these great results for them?
I'm sure they were stoked, but like Bergamont was a big, like a pretty big company, but quite small on the mountain bike side of things. But we had like some really cool core guys who were like super into the, and they were the ones designing the bikes and stuff. So that year, 2016, we had a new bike, which was awesome. Kind of similar to like what the nuke proof is now. Same kind of linkage and worked the same, and it just worked amazingly. Like super happy on it. And that was cool. So like they were putting in, they saw like that the team was going quite well, so they were like keen to build a bike that wasn't just like kind of a catalog one.
Yeah.
But it was around then that there was kind of whispers of Bergamot getting sold and stuff, so there was also a bit of uncertainty. Obviously, like we'd had our budget kicked up quite a lot, but like things were still pretty like tight. You know, the team wasn't like making any money. We like, I was kind of spending my wage that was put aside in running the team, but also like I wasn't working. So you're not making any money, but it's not costing you to live and do all this cool stuff. But then you start getting these results and you're like, oh, like maybe I'd be kind of like keen to like finish the season with some money, or like, you know, not like borrow off mum and dad and then pay it back. And, you know, like, but like, I'm sure they were stoked because like, as we always had like good, like I was lucky enough to like always have great teammates. And with those good teammates, Jack Moyle, like Rupert Chapman, Reece Wilson, like came good results as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, if I wasn't doing well, then one of those guys were doing well, and we were all kind of like sharing the momentum, which was pretty sweet. And I think that like definitely put a lot of eyeballs on like the Bergamot brand. So like, I'm sure they were pretty stoked. But yeah, we were like, I would only deal with a few people, and they were like core diehard into it, which was really cool. And like they would go to the end of the earth to make sure like we had stuff that we needed when we needed it, which made my job a lot easier. Having someone who was kind of like doing the inventory and stuff like that, because it's pretty hard doing those kind of jobs from New Zealand, flying over like 2 weeks before the race starts and then realizing you don't have all the stuff that you needed. So it was a team effort. So yeah. But then that kind of leads me into the next bit. Some of those guys like started to leave, and then there were whispers. So like it definitely started to change towards the end of 2016, and that kind of like planted. I was kind of getting a little bit burnt out with, because I'm kind of like a numbers guy. I was always really good at maths at school and stuff, and I would spend the weekends like crunching numbers on when our payments are coming in, on how we're going to like make it work till the next one comes in and stuff. And it was all fun and games to begin with, but then it was like it kind of started like consuming me, where that's all I thought about.
Yeah.
You know, like
Sick of just surviving. Yeah.
And it, you know, I'd be lying if I said it like didn't start to like kind of like take a little bit of the fun away, because I was actually like, now I didn't even know what stress was, but I was kind of like starting to get stressed. Like whatever my idea of stress is, but it was like,
Is it?
Yeah, it wasn't like the fun. Yeah, it was starting to there were too many people involved that like needed to be paid and stuff. And then when you're dealing with other people, it's like you feel the weight of the pressure of like making it all work, because it's like your thing. So I definitely like, while the results and stuff were going really well in 2016, I think we had one more year on our contract, and I was already starting to think of like, maybe I'll try and find something different.
Yeah, okay. So into 2017 then, third at the first DWS behind brother Win and current teammate Matt Walker. We've heard Win's account of that race. Give us yours.
Man. I had this little 140mm bike, and it was like a full mudder. And I'd blown the shock up, and it was like full rebound. But sometimes in the mud, like it just works. So I rode practice, and I didn't have anyone to give me a shock. And someone's like, "No, you're not going to ride like that." And I was like, "It actually felt mint." Just full pogo stick. And then, so I was riding around with Rat Boy and Craig Evans, and we were just having a laugh. It was probably one of the most physical EWSs I've ever done. I think it was 2,300 meters climbing in the mud. So like the racing's one step part, but then doing the liaisons in the mud really takes it out of you. So it was a big day. And then I remember like 4 stages in, I was leading the race. And whispers started coming back to us that I was leading the race. So I was like, oh, this is sick. And then I had a little washout on like stage 5, I think. And I twisted my bars and it ripped the dropper cable and like got it pulled and jammed. So this dropper post went up. So I had to race the whole stage with the dropper post jammed up. And it was just like Tyson Fury just like pounding me in, because it was kind of like steep, so I like had to be behind the seat to make it work. So I'm just kind of like taking hits in the abs from this seat. And then I finished the stage, managed to get down, thought I'd thrown it away. Had one more stage to go, and then in the practice for the final stage, the stage was going to go over this bridge, but like in practice, it didn't. It was like a 5-meter stretch, but it was like a left gravel turn over a like kind of a rainbow shaped bridge, and then a right gravel turn. Like you could never mess it up. But like we didn't actually practice it. And then so on the final stage, I came in and I was like going for it. And I just ended, because I hadn't practiced onto this bridge. I didn't realize how tight and I hadn't even really looked at it. Because for some reason we just rolled out, and I'd missed this, as it turned out, crucial piece of trail. So like on the last stage, I washed out within 5 meters of the finish line because I didn't realize how tight the turn was. And then had to run it across the line and lost the race by 4 seconds.
Oh.
But it was, I mean, everyone that day had serious ups and downs, and we were just stoked to do a Kiwi 1, 2, 3. So yeah, it was good.
I remember this one was like Cam's first like international AWS, and she was leading the whole day, and then she couldn't pedal. The last stage was quite pedally, I believe, and then she got 4th in the end.
Yeah,
and
I remember her getting 4th.
But it was crazy. There's no more water like for people to drink, because people were washing the bikes with the water supposed to drink. Like it was insane.
I remember I got cramp, and it was like an electric shock into both my legs that I like jumped off the bike, and I just was like, I couldn't move. And Craig Evans was breaking up little bits of muesli bar and like feeding it into my mouth, and then like giving me drops of water. And he's like massaging my legs, and he's like, "Come on, bro, you gotta get going, man." And I've never had cramp like that. Like I couldn't move. I couldn't get up, and we were 100 meters from the drink, like where the water was, and I just couldn't get there. And then I just started like getting a little bit of food, and like someone had some salt and stuff, and I could just manage to get back on the bike. But it was like, I thought we were going to have to call like the medical like meal to come and get me, because I couldn't move my legs. Yeah.
So 2018, you parted ways from Bergamont and moved to Pivot, and it's been fantastic for both you and them since that move. Tell us a bit about how that came about.
It came about, well, because Bernie was doing Pivot and I was doing Bergamont. So and he was like living in Queenstown by that point, and he'd been super helpful when we were privateering as well. So like I had a lot to do with him from the get-go. And he basically just said, you know, our teams were kind of growing at the same rate, and then but I was, you know, getting a little bit off it, and he was just like, well, like if you want, you could come and ride for us. The offer's there. We can kind of sell them on you being an enduro rider. But obviously you'll just come and race downhill and maybe do the odd EWS. We'll just that's how we'll get the deal over the line. And I was like, yeah, sweet. So it definitely made that transition away from like running the setup to like going into being just a rider way easier, like already having like a good offer ready to go. Like it wasn't like I was like quitting a good deal at Bergamot and then going looking for something that didn't already exist. It was just like from one to the other, which made it super easy and had great teammates. Yeah, so
yeah, was Rupert on the team with you at the same time, or was it there before? I can't remember.
He was there for 1 year before me.
Yeah, so Elliot left on 16, and then he came on 17, and then 18 you came along.
Yeah. And then me and Rupert had been teammates on Bergamot, and then Bernie stole him. And then we just kind of like merged back because Tom Lois, who was Rupert's old mechanic, was still working for me, and Kurt, my mechanic. So we just like basically merged the two teams. The staff and me came, which was sweet. So not much change. We just, moved on to a bit racier bikes, I would say.
Yeah, well, it showed because as soon as you moved to Pivot, you won your first race in national champs. New Zealand national champ. So how much does a title, like a national title, mean to you?
I was real stoked because, it's kind of one of those things because we all grew up racing the national series and stuff. So you always want to like win a couple of national rounds, and then like once they brought in the sleeve, it definitely like has a bit of prestige because it looks quite cool, I reckon. The national champion sleeve, it doesn't matter what country you're from. So definitely I was pretty stoked for that being my first outing on the new bike and new team and stuff. And then and I got my first bonus that was like
did we get the sleeve in time for your next race? Because that's always a problem.
I wouldn't call it a sleeve.
Yeah, I was half the arm or something, no?
It was they'd gone into London and got someone to like screen print a New Zealand sleeve onto like some fabric and then sewed it on, and it was like cardboard.
I still got that.
It was like if you were tuned up on what flags look like, I would not have passed it as a commissaire. But we got it done. It's definitely something that people can so easily forget, is that you have to have the sleeve.
No, Bernard is not going to pay the fee for it.
No.
So after that, you won also the Trans Enduro, and I presume there was like blind racing, right? There? Not really?
Oh, not really. So, not too blind because pretty close to home trails. Yeah.
Yeah, but the way blind races work, I feel like this is something that you like as an enduro racer. Is that like you wish more enduro races were in that format?
I don't. To be honest, like the trans races are the only blind ones I've done. So I would like to see it or try it more, but also it's like kind of a terrifying concept because of how hard and fast you can race at enduro now, that like it would be pretty sketchy.
Yeah, the bikes are very good, like better than then.
I think if they like had some kind of marking system where like, you know, like triple arrow meant like blind drop or something, then like you could race blind like a bit safer. But like, yeah, a full blind run in a race situation at like world level would be pretty scary, I reckon, because like you're still gonna commit to like really going hell for leather.
Yeah, at least you will, because it's always very scary when you do like, I don't know, like a photo shoot, for example, with Ed, and we're like, you know, somewhere, maybe don't really know the trails that well, and then we're like, oh shit, Ed is coming, watch this. And then it's a photo shoot, it's not even a video shoot, so you just need to look good on the bike, and Eddie will be like full gas and like half crashing, and we'll be like, oh my god. Yeah, we always have big laugh for watching you do your thing on a bike, for sure.
Nice.
So carry on with 2018, and there's another memorable Fort William experience for you, because you were like rider number 20, plate number 20.
Yeah.
So you presume to be protected, but we all know like that it doesn't really mean that you are, depending on who is in the protection. So tell us a bit about that weekend.
Oh man, I had a horrific Fort William crash.
Oh, was it the one in the fast section before the deer gate? Was it the one?
Yeah, and I blew my hand off.
Oh yeah.
At that stage, I was still clinging on to the whole "I'm cool, I don't run gloves" thing.
Okay.
Like Kiwis and Aussies, blame Blinky.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I wasn't running gloves, and we're at the top of the hill, and it just started to spit, like not rain, spit, like, you know, actually kind of perfect conditions for Fort William. But I didn't have any gloves, and the grips, I was running these ODI long necks, which were like my grip of choice for no gloves, and they get like super slippery with any moisture on them. And then so I was coming down that super fast bit before the deer fence, and I just like hit a hole and my right hand slipped off.
Oh.
And then I just like, you know, like folded downward dog over the handlebars. And just I remember like flipping. I got biffed so far onto the, like, thankfully when you crash off the track at Fort William, it's kind of soft.
Yeah.
But my bike got thrown like a good 100 meters down onto the next bit of track, like past the next bit of track. So it was like, there was no way I could get it, run back up. Like my run was done. But yeah, I did think I was protected, but as it transpired, I wasn't protected. But I think I was just happy to walk away from like such a huge crash, because it was like, there's some dude has a photo of it, and it's like my hand's just like completely outstretched, like I'm grabbing something off the ground. And when you know the section of trail, it's not somewhere you want to crash.
No.
Yeah, I think you were quite lucky with the outcome of it all. Despite not being qualified. I remember seeing the sequence. I was like, wow. Yeah, quite the solid crasher, Eddie, you are.
Yeah, I've had my fair share.
Yeah, so with the move to pivot also on AWS, so your results also like jump up a level, 11th, 7th, and 3rd also in La Tuile. So that was like the first podium. Everyone knows like enduro is like kind of where the back sales are. Like obviously the Firebird is the most like sold bike probably like on the gravity side. So were you like kind of like, do you think that moving to pivot like played like a big role in like making you a better enduro rider, or was it like the support of the factory ride, or how do you see that?
massively. Way, I would say, like, if you're comparing the pivot to my Bergamon, and it's like they weren't really, you can't compare them. And I'm not like bagging on the brand, but like my pivot was like an enduro bike and my Bergamon would have been down country.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
you know, like I was racing with 34 mil stanchions and stuff. It's like, you know, 140, 150, and a bike that's got like a 66-degree head angle. You know, just it felt like you're kind of riding a square box. You know, flat top tube. Nothing wasn't designed for what we were really using it for. So then when I got on the pivot, and I started out riding a Max 6, which is like a more trail bike version in the pivot range. And even that was like, man, it was so good. I was just like, what have I been doing? And then they released I got to ride the new Firebird for like a day for a photo shoot and to pick which size I wanted to ride. And I was just like, man, when I get this bike, it's like kind of a cheat code, you know, it's like it's the next level in performance in terms of like your equipment. And I still reckon like the old Firebird is like handles itself, or like it's like even today, it's like that bike was mint off the get-go. So as soon as I got it, I raced Petson, and that's where I got 7th, but I was running like 2nd and 3rd all day.
Mhm.
And then I had a small crash in the last stage and bent my rotor, and but I bent it so bad that I like couldn't use the brake, and it was a 1,000-meter descent that stage. So I lost like a minute and went back to like 7th just to get down the hill. So and that would have been that was my first like weekend on that bike. So I was straight on pace. So I was pretty stoked to like get that. And everyone, I saw like the next year loads of privateers like racing that bike, because you could just tell that it like worked so well.
Yeah, for sure. So 2019, I remember that because we came straight from like another race. Like you won your first AWS, so it was in Les Eaux, and you beat Richie by under second. It was like down to the wire.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about that battle.
It was funny. It was like we raced for 40 minutes, but really we could have just raced on a 2-minute stage.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what it came down to. We were pretty much tied going into the last stage, like talking tenths of a second. So it was just like whoever wins that. And then I remember going over the lift, and Bernie and Barney were like below us, and he's just like said in some much nicer words, he's like, yeah, like go get it done. And I kind of just like, I remember lining up for the stage and was just like, I'm actually just gonna win the race. Like I'd already decided. It was kind of, you hear of like people, and like if you could, I can understand how like the really great sportsmen, why they're so great, because like they can tap into this energy or whatever it is. But like the few times that I've like experienced it, you only, you know, there's no like other options. So I was just like, sweet, dropping in, I'm gonna win the race. And then I just went and won the race. and like this, it was like bizarre talking about it, or like how when you think about it. But that like self-belief and confidence, there was no like, oh, what if. I was just like, I just decided on the start line that and then you go into like flow state or whatever, but like I just like dropped in, and then next thing I crossed the line, and it was sweet. So it was like cool, very cool to like experience stuff like that, because like, you know, like for the like top sportsmen, it might happen a lot, but like I could only count on a few fingers the times that you like really do tap into that kind of like flow state and like energy. But it's like cool to like do it. I just wish I could do it more.
Yeah, for sure. How good was it to finally win like NWS after you've been close in the past, like you said in Rotorua, and also being on the podium a couple of times, and your whole team was there. I remember.
Yeah, it was sick. Yeah, I was just like really stoked to I don't know, just to like tick it off really. Especially my focus was like definitely hitting more enduro by that point. So yeah, it was really cool.
Cool. Well,
and you remember as well. Sorry, Jordan. I remember as well. You were like win the teams as well. So you guys were on, like, you guys went on the podium in like Resort's village, and Walker and like had a couple of beers, I think maybe before going on a podium, and the mayor of Lizor was on the podium too. and Matt was like had a champagne bottle, and he just like straight on sprayed the mayor with his champagne and then stole his hat. I don't know. Yeah, he tipped the ball on his head, and like he was doing all type of stuff, and I was like, oh my god. But I think the guys at Pipit found it pretty hilarious, to be honest. But yeah, it was just a pretty good day, like all in all. And I think we came from Andorra as well. And that podium in Andorra, I got fourth in Andorra. So it was like my first podium of the year, and then you won. So it was like a very good weekend for us for sure.
And a big drive. You guys bombed it through the night and then turned up like halfway through the race. It was sick. Yeah.
No black pearl for us, luckily.
We'll take a quick break there, but we'll be back with more from Eddie after these messages. So I'd written the bulk of this podcast, and then this afternoon I shared a clip of Brooke McDonald crashing on Instagram, and we exchanged a few messages, and I told him you were on the pod tonight, and I asked him what I should ask you about, and here's what he said. You feeling nervous at all?
No, just sometimes I'm always curious to see whether Brooke's questions are like worthy of the airwaves.
I have had to kind of, I've had to tone them down a bit. What do you think he might have said?
Who knows? It could be anything. Me and Brooke have been through the trenches together.
You should ask him about New Year's Eve in Wanaka. Something to do with an orange Bedford.
Oh, so we used to the New Zealand National Series used to be like it was basically a pilgrimage. It was like they would stagger it, so it was 6 races, and one year it would start in the North Island, and the next year it would start in the South Island, and you'd race 6 weekends in a row, making your way to the North or vice versa. And when it started in the South Island, there's like a bit of a party town called Wanaka, which when you're 16, everyone goes to. So like every 2 years, you'd be stoked to like start the nationals down there. And we were down there, and the Gorge Road, the like iconic Gorge Road jumps in Queenstown used to only be like a quarter of the size they are now, and the rest of it was for like cars to be dumped and stuff. So like we always used to go there and try and get a car running, and then like demo derby it around the car park and stuff. And there was this orange Bedford camper van there, and it seemed like too good to be true, but it was just unlocked. So then we got into it, and we were like, we saw that it wasn't registered as a Bedford; it was registered as something else. So it seemed kind of sketchy. So we were like, "Fuck it, we'll just take it." So we drove it over the Crown Range, and we like had it for free accommodation for the whole of our trip over there. And then on New Year's night, I'd like kind of comb it out in the back of it, and Brooke, he hops in and does like a burnout and boosts off, but it's got these French style doors at the back that both open up, and like I jumped in and crawled into bed and hadn't shut them. So like when when Brooke drove off, I just rolled out the back. And he didn't even know, and he just drove off up the road, and I'm just sitting on the middle of the road with my bedding, like scratching my head, like what's going on? Yeah. And then he came back like a few minutes later, and I'm like standing there with my duvet around me, like yeah, it was pretty good.
So I always get the serious part of this podcast, George. Let's talk about last season then, 2022. So you're doing both disciplines, like doing some enduros and some downhills. Like, do you decide your strategy? Like, how does it work for you? Like, do you have a plan of what races you're gonna do, or you just do this start and then see how it pans out depending on your results?
No, I think from the get-go, like, was always going to do full EWS. It just doesn't make any sense to not do a whole series like anymore. So, and I think like I feel super lucky, like, to still be able to race downhill at like a good level. But at one point, like in your offset, like nowadays, you kind of need to pick which one you're going to like put your time and effort into, because one of them's going to, like, I just don't, like, I need to ride my enduro bike a lot, and I can't really do, so like you have to pick. Whereas I think like 2018 and stuff, I felt like I didn't really need to, but I think just the level in both is, the level in downhill now is crazy. Like I don't get to do enough of the background stuff that you need to like really confidently say you're like 100% prepared to race World Cup downhill. Like I kind of like set up my bike at the start of the season, and I just come to the races and race it as is, bar twisting a few knobs. But then when you look at the like F1 style that Bruni and all the teams are doing, and even like you look at the amount of riding that Bernie's doing these days, it is I think it is, it's a little bit tricky to like, if you weren't like focused on one, I think then both would probably go mediocre. Yeah.
Do you think like it helps you though to like do, because we've seen like Isabeau Couderier as well, and some of the enduro riders come and like Nogakuram doing some of the rounds. Like, do you think, and we've seen the other way around as well. Do you think it helps with like enduro racing?
Yeah, I think it really does, because like enduro racing is just long form downhilling. It's like it's still racing bikes downhill, and downhill makes you so like, it's getting those marginal gains and stuff, and like, eking out as much time as you can run after run to be able to execute the perfect run at the end of the weekend. And just the speed, you get accustomed to like racing at that speed and on a bike that's like a bit safer. So like when you go back to the enduro bike, you might be riding 5% quicker than you would have if you just stayed on the enduro bike. That's why like I guess people train on motocross bikes and stuff. But yeah, I just think like the level has gotten so much more technically higher, that you can still like show up and do really well, but like to be able to like battle for like season overalls and stuff, you need to be putting in a lot of runs, which is quite hard to do when I feel like I need to be like training or doing longer rides and stuff on my enduro bike. So it's like you're always kind of like taking some time off the other discipline and putting it into one. But yeah, on like, and then in saying that, like if you start the season with a good result, like you can just get the ball rolling. Like confidence is like the number one thing. you know, and you see it like time and time again that like someone like Ronan Dunn last year goes from not qualifying to World Cup podiums, top 20 regular. And it's just like, you just got to get that ball to move. So like when you can get that going in downhill, then it's like, it's the best thing ever, because it's just like the runs just start seeming easy.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's like kind of the same in enduro? Like, because on the AWS result last year, like they're written here like 8th, 4th, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 5th, 12th, and 22nd. So it's like incredibly consistent. You think like it is also kind of like confidence is like also a key factor, or do you see anything else that like made you ride such consistent results?
No, it's mainly just confidence. It's like you get then you like go to the races as like that's where you belong, you know. You don't I get when you get kind of used to it, you don't really have that like imposter syndrome kind of thing that like Jack was talking about, and that like I've had in downhill so many times. Whereas now, like I'm like, well, I never like to like set goals and stuff. Like I am like kind of a little bit disappointed if you are outside the top 10, because like you're always in the top 10. And with that comes like a confidence that that's where you like belong, and that's like that's the group that you like, the level that you're riding at. But like it definitely takes a long time to get there. But like, and that's why like you see like guys in World Cup downhill, and there's, you know, I always say there's only 10 top 10 guys, and they're all pretty, you know, even the guys who aren't in the top 5, but like they've had, you know, 10 upwards of 10 World Cup podiums. They turn up to the race and they're like, I'm a top 10 guy. Like, you know, so you can't, it's like hard to shake that confidence that you get from consistently putting down good results.
Yeah, for sure. And it takes the pressure off as well. Once you get a good result, you're like, okay, like I can do it again. And I felt like me as well. I had the pressure of like doing a podium. And once I was doing a podium, another one would come because I had like a bit less pressure of doing well, so to speak.
And like, you've like, let's say like someone who just like gets 6 heats, and then it becomes a talking point, you know, like they've got the weight of expectation from themselves, because they're like, oh, if I'm 6, like when am I going to get a podium? Like, you know, they start putting a bit more pressure on themselves, and then they've got the pressure of everyone else talking about it. So like, yeah, it can be like quite a lot to deal with. But as soon as you like crack that code, you know, you might just be riding a lot easier. Just everything just comes a bit easier because you've like shaken that monkey off your back.
Yeah.
You mentioned the flow state before, and I know there's an article on the Pivot website about flow state that was really interesting. And you said like you could probably count it on every single like finger of your hands, like how many times you actually found the flow state. Did you find it last year, and what's like the key to achieving it?
Yeah, see, this is the thing, is like I wish I knew. I definitely
This is George's question, but it's a pretty good one, because if you knew how to answer that, you win a lot of races.
Yeah. For the first part, like last year, I think the fastest I was riding, I felt, was at Crans Montana, which was like one of my, like I only got 12th, but I was like, yeah, I reckon I was going so well, but then things just weren't going well, you know?
I've seen the video.
Yeah, but just like, you know, a crash that like would, you know, twist your bars, and then you get trip up, and just, so some of the runs that like that whole weekend, I thought that was the best I'd rode all season, because I was just riding real easy. It's just it just seemed to be one of those races where things didn't go my way. It wasn't like I was crashing like huge or anything like that. I like, lost a chain, damaged a derailleur, little things that like were kind of outside of my control. But I reckon that was like the best I was riding all weekend, and I was sometimes getting a couple runs where you like start and then finish, and that's what I describe as the flow state, because you can block every external influence out. So like total focus means that you can't remember like what's happened. You just like completely focused in the moment. So that's why like you start and then you finish. And how you get there, no idea. I mean, like there's definitely like over the years you try and, I listen to music and stuff, and I like try and distract myself away from like my own thoughts or the pressure of the situation, and just like keep coming back to like what you're doing. Sometimes I just like to look around and be like, just remind yourself, like how lucky, like how cool it is where we're racing, like things that aren't, I'm not worried about the line or stuff, because when it's coming down to your run, the lines, like you don't need like, obviously a lot of people use visualization and stuff, and I do too, but I don't like to like do it over and over and over for 40 minutes because I'm warming up. So like just try and like chat to my mechanic, or like, be, as cliche as it sounds, like in the moment, because you just want to be able to like, and that's sometimes when like you're late to the start or something's gone wrong and it's hijacked your train of thought. Those are like the easiest runs to do really well on, because you're so flustered getting to the start gate. 5 deep breaths, goggles on, go. All you can think about is like what's coming up, so you haven't had any time to like get that whole tornado of thoughts going through your head. And that's why, sometimes when it is going bad leading up to it, it can be like the catalyst for like a real good run.
Yes, really interesting. So you mentioned your crash in stage 4 of Crans-Montana, but obviously you're like probably like on a podium ride or close. But I feel like, when I'm not at every enduro race, but I get like some kind of feedback through the live timing or our team chat and stuff, and I feel like you're not the rider that's like there's a lot going on in your race sometimes, like maybe a low mechanical, a little crash there and up and down, and suddenly Eddie is like second, and then the next stage is like 30th, and you're like, wow. So it seems like you're very like determined, even though like racing wise just crazy stuff is thrown at you, you're still like hanging on and try to like be positive. And I learned that from you as well, like try to like switch and still be like focused on the next thing. And like, how do you see yourself in that like aspect?
I definitely would say that's something that I like strive to do when because like I was saying before, I don't really like to set goals, but like I feel really disappointed in myself and like the effort that's gone into like, because it's not just like me racing, it's like it's a whole team that, it's an army that like behind you, like getting it all to work. And if I don't like try my hardest, then I'm like, and it's happened before where I've kind of given up. And that's like something that's like really hard to like live with, because I feel like the 1 or 2 times that I've given up, I've really like let myself down, and I've had to like, deal with like being super gutted about it. So like, even if you've crashed, it's like I haven't crashed intentionally. I've crashed because I'm like really trying, but like I'm still gonna just like pick yourself up and like try and keep pushing all the way to the end, because the few times that I have given up, I've been super gutted about it after the race. when all you had to do was just like keep feeding it. No one's going to be like pissed off, but like you might, like let's say if it's enduro, like you might have a horrible week, but if you finished and won the last stage, like you're stoked, or like you at least finished and like you didn't like leave any, like you don't want to leave anything out on the track, because like I've just found like for me it sucks. You feel really, really guilty that you didn't try your hardest. So yeah, you just like move on as quick as you can to the next thing, because the game plan never changes. It's pretty simple. It's like bike from point A to point B as quick as you can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And like me and Walker's like the same, like at Derby this year, we were like pretty off it for the last stage. Like you look at each other and you're like, fuck this. Like it was just a hard day out in the saddle. But we just like he was following me because they reseed us for your current rankings, and we just fist bump each other and we just say like big mana to the finish line, and that means like big mana's like big heart. And it's kind of like a piss take, but like we're being serious. It's like one more stage to go, like let's just do it. So yeah, kind of just try and take that into all forms of bike riding, I guess. Yeah.
So back to Andorra 2022, the sketchy stump gap. Something happened in your race run. Did you lose a tooth or something?
Actually, just after it. Yeah, I was umming and ahhing about that stump gap because, I don't know, I was just watching people. You never want. You sometimes just don't watch. There wasn't anything really technical about it, but there was people getting sketchy, and it looked way harder than like actually it was. So then I jumped it twice on race day morning, both perfectly, and I was like, sweet, I'm going to do it, because now I've got at least I've got both options. I've done it, so, and it feels way faster. And then in the race, I just had a sketchy run. The wheels were kind of falling off. Yeah, I was not in the flow state. I was thinking about the mistakes I'd made 100 meters ago. And so I just ended up going off that stump gap a bit quick, and got a bit buck wild. And I had like a retainer plate with a fake tooth on it, because I'd long story, but I'd lost the like front couple of teeth, top and bottom, over the years, but like all relating to one thing, and I'd slowly been getting them fixed. So I just had this one plate left, and as I got sketchy, my like tongue flipped and it like went into my mouth, but then because I was breathing it, it popped out and went into my chin piece. This is mid run, and I could kind of like see the tooth stuck in the helmet. So I went across that bridge and dropped into the next section, still thinking like, do I stop and save the tooth, or do I just keep rallying? And then as I dropped into that chute, it just flipped out, and it's never to be seen again. Yeah. And Brooke's girlfriend Lucy was like, "Oh, I could go have a look for it," and I was like, "Oh, Lucy, it's a pretty dusty track."
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So
thing's long gone.
Yeah, definitely. You ended the season 5th in the EWS overall, and Pivot took the team prize. Was that a big thing for Pivot?
I think so, yeah. And I know they're real stoked, and I know Bernie's really proud of it, because, yeah, he's put together a program, and like, and it's just cool because like, we've got like Morgane, and we kind of call her like our like our points cow. We just like milk her every race and get some more. So we always joke like that, yeah. So we can always rely on Morgan because she's just super consistent, like always up there. And then me and Matt just had like a really consistent year, pretty much chasing each other every race. And there's like it's hard to like put together a team thing because it's in this kind of game because it's so easy for someone to like tap out with injury or like for a team to just sometimes all the stars align and everyone has like a great weekend, but at the same time you can have a really bad weekend. So like over the course of a season, it's pretty cool to be able to like be there week in, week out and then clinch the overall like pretty comfortably. Because I know how hard it is to like, just keep getting those points together. But yeah, and it's just like we didn't have the best year the year before, but everyone kind of came out swinging, and yeah, good bikes, good vibes, and I don't know, pays off. So yeah, it's cool.
Recipe worked.
Yeah.
So, I mean, last year you got yourself a top 20 at Fort William at the Downhill World Cup and obviously 5th in the EWS overall. With ESO making the changes to how they're going to run things and some of the, the events having the Enduro World Cup and the Downhill World Cup on the same weekend. I mean, going off what you've said, some of the things you've said earlier, are you going to just fully focus on Enduro this year or are you planning on doing both in Leo again?
Nah, I'm not going to race the double headers in downhill. I just think, like part of me is like, oh, like you could, like if you had a good morning of practice and you got 3 runs at Leogang, you could probably, you could get up to track speed and quali on your 4th run. Like I know you could. But you also could like really end yourself trying to go race pace 2 runs earlier than you want to be, and stuff like that. So that's kind of a risk that I'm like not willing to take, is like trying to go that fast that early. So like, yeah, I won't be racing at Leogang or Ludenville, but I'll be planning to do all the other World Cups, which is still quite a few, and it's quite nice because like the end of the season is snowshoe in Mont Saint Anne, which is after the EWS season is finished. So that's just like a little bit of like downhill holiday.
Nice.
Yeah. So the plan is to hopefully race Lenzerheide, Val d'Isole, Andorra, Chatel. So 6 World Cups and hopefully world champs.
Oh, nice. So yeah, you'll get a bit of time. Are you disappointed about the way ESO have done it, where you're going to miss some downhill World Cups, or is it not really?
I'm not disappointed, but I just think that I just don't really want to see you sacrificing like the quality of an enduro race just to fit it in with a triple header, like because with like I can't really see where they're going to race the EWS and Leogang, because like I know like that it's super hard for them to build consented trails. Like if they can't move the downhill track 5 meters to the right, like how can we how can you put 6 stages that are fresh? So it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out. But the rest, it doesn't really affect many people, and like I'm not too phased on whether I miss it. I don't feel like I'm missing out. It's just like that's just the way the calendar works. Yeah.
So we've already had a couple of Enduro World Cups in Australia. You were 8th in Medina and 10th in Blue Derby. Are you happy with your start?
Yeah, I was pretty happy. I was like, obviously went in there for I'm always happy just to be in the top 10. So tick those two boxes. Felt like I wasn't quite firing on all cylinders. Just wasn't like feeling it, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I was pretty stoked. Because I just didn't feel like I was having a great weekend, but I was still like getting
The mix.
I was still in the mix, which is like so I, cracked a beer after Derby and I was like, man, that was good. Like I didn't feel great, but like still got solid 2 weeks on the board, so I was happy. Yeah.
You've been racing for a long time. You've done incredibly well, and I'm guessing that if someone had sat you down after that 2012 season and told you everything you'd achieve, you'd probably be very happy with it. What's left for you? What are your hopes and dreams for the future?
Good question, really. Yeah. Like people always ask, they're like, oh, like when like when might you retire or what's next and stuff. But like I'm still really, sometimes I enjoy racing more than I enjoy riding, which I think is like a pretty healthy way to be, because I just can't go to that that last 5% unless it's like on the racetrack.
Yeah.
And we get to race these tracks that would never like form in such a way outside of like the highest level.
Yeah.
And I like still really enjoy that. So I think that means the future's like bright because I'm still having a great time like rallying down the hill. And yeah, it's like, I'm sure, because like Emily's recently off the bat of like, moving into the next stage, and like it's cool that like now we have some younger guys on our team, so can kind of get involved, not so much with like coaching and stuff, but just like helping those two World Cups that I'll be at but I won't be racing. Like how can I help?
Yeah.
Not mentor, but just like how can I like use my experience to make their experience easier?
Yeah.
So it's really cool that now we have, the next wave of pivot athletes coming through while we're still there, because like this whole podcast has been about mistakes and little things that you've made along the way. But like, if you can help someone minimize, but also like still learn, that's something that I find really rewarding. So yeah, just continue trying to go fast, but also with some thought about how could we make other people go fast too.
I imagine you'd be great at that, because because of everything you've been through, and you've got a good way of, you tell a good story, you're good at expressing yourself. So I think and
and we've got a cool crew of young talent coming through now, because if I'm never going to win a World Cup, I'd really like to see someone that you've hung out with do it, because you'd be so proud, and there'd be that you could play a pivotal role in someone else's success, or like getting them to that level. So hopefully we can farm some fast Groms out of the pivot camp.
Cool. Well, I think this is going to be the last show we get to do before the World Cup starts, so I thought we'd end it with a few predictions very quickly. Just one name off each of you. Men's overall winner, 2023. Ooh. Jack looks like he's got someone.
I want to say Laurie. He's had a really good start to the year. I'd love to see him do it. So I'm gonna go with Laurie.
That's a good choice. Eddie?
This is, man,
it's a horrible.
It's cool. It's cool that it's this hard,
Yeah.
You know, like I'll go Deprella, and the Deprella from 2021
Yeah.
might come back.
Yeah, you didn't fuck with that guy.
Emmy?
Don't know, maybe finals. He was very
Yeah.
quiet lately.
Good shout. Good
Yeah.
shout.
Ooh, I like
He's done
it.
nothing pre-season either. Like, well, nothing we've
Mm.
seen. Nothing we've seen. Obviously, I'm sure he's been busy. But
Yeah, it's been, like he's very quiet, so I don't know. Something's up.
Women's overall winner.
I gotta be real careful here after the other night. First half of this podcast, actually, it was the other night, but it's part one of this podcast. I gotta be real fucking careful here. First letter that come out of my mouth better not be an N.
Should we all just say Cammy? Should we all just say Cammy? Yeah.
Eddie, go first, please.
Yeah, well, I'm going Cammy.
No, but like to be real honest, like,
I'll justify my decision with that Cammy's she's just a killer. Yeah, she like puts in. Yeah, she looks at every bit of it. Yeah.
Jack?
Cammy.
Do we need to ask Emmy?
Too scared to even think about
nah. No, but like I'd say like there is big competition, and but I think Miriam is not in a very good place now. Like where her concussion symptom and everything, and it's not even quite sure she's gonna be at the first round. So, or like in top shape, you know. So
yeah,
that's a little bit like sad and annoying. And so I think Miriam, consistency wise, with the new format, will be her like because Nina and Vali are so fast, but they're not as consistent.
Yeah.
So if one of them finds consistency, like it will be hard for Cami to back it up. But consistency wise, I think Miriam is better. But as she's not very fit, I'll say Cam.
Good explanation. And last one, surprise package of 2023. Who do you think, like we had Ronan, like you said before last year, who do you think is going to come through? And
I think obviously there'll be a few at different levels, but certainly in the men's, the one in my mind looking at preseason results is Charlie Hatton. I think he's going to have a big year.
Good shout.
Yeah.
I think he's going to have a big year. I'd love to see him win one, or at least one.
Eddie?
I could see Phil Atwell finding his Phil Atwell consistency again. He's one of the most talented bike handlers.
He won the IXS the other day, didn't he?
Yeah, he won the IXS, and he's got a good program with like his bike. It's really,
Yeah.
And yeah, he's had World Cup podiums. If he can get that ball rolling, I could see him being a regular top 20 dude again.
Emmy?
I'm not sure, really. I don't know. Like, I'll say, like, me and Cam. Obviously, I'm always more thinking about the women's because that's like they were my competitors, and I watched them closely because of Jenna. And we were making a list of like the women that are like because of like top 10 and top 15, and we were like, wow, there's so many. There's like 20 plus. And there's only 10 spots for finals.
Yeah.
So my surprise package, which is not really a surprise package because she's been there all along, but she hasn't been there in a while, is Tani Seagrave.
Okay. So
I think she's hopefully finding a way back, and she's an amazing rider. So hopefully she can come back and Rachel Atherton. Yeah, there you go. Even another one. So between the two, we'll have another Brit that's gonna be up there battling. Hopefully, that'll be fun to watch.
Cool. Well, one last question before we go, Ed. You've been on the same team for a good few years now. What's your favourite Emily Siegenthaler story?
Oh,
Did I get a beer?
There's no stories.
nah, but she is very fun to have around on the team. We call her security because she marches around like she's carrying kayaks.
Depending who's around, it's needed.
Yeah, it's just definitely needed. But yeah, no, it's Emily's been an awesome teammate and has transitioned into being an awesome member of staff. And I think our team she's definitely kept the cart on the rails. Kept it heading in the right direction sometimes because we can all get pretty boyish and we definitely needed a firm, strong female to keep us in check sometimes.
Cool. Well, thanks for making.
Thanks, Eddie.
Thanks for making
the stories when we're off there.
No story to tell.
Good stuff. Well, thanks for making the time to come on the pod. It's been as fun as I knew it would be, and best of luck for the rest of the season.
Thanks, mate. Cheers for having me.
Pleasure. That's it for another episode. Thanks to the sponsors of the show, Hope Technology, JTech Suspension, Revolution Bike Park, Ride Southern Spain, Schwalbe and SingleTrackWorld.com. As always, if you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you've got a second, please drop us a review. Alternatively, give us a follow on Instagram at Making Up the Numbers Racing or Facebook.com/Making Up the Numbers. Thanks for listening. We'll be back in a few weeks, probably after Leah Gang.